The Contract of Three Dates by Clara Beaumont, Chapter 1, The Terms. Rain lashed the windows of Monroe's strategy like it had a personal vendetta against the building. Sheets of water slid down the glass in slow, crooked paths, blurring the neon of downtown Seattle into a restless smear of color. Inside the corner office on the 20th floor, Isla Monroe stood with one hand on the window frame and the other wrapped around a mug of coffee that had long since gone cold. 32 years old, founder, negotiator, professional bulldozer when necessary, and if the quiet ache sitting low in her chest meant anything, painfully fucking lonely. The city stretched beneath her, restless and alive. Traffic crawled through wet streets. Bars glowed. Somewhere down there, people were laughing, touching, kissing in doorways and dark corners. Meanwhile, Ela stood in a tailored charcoal suit that cost more than most people's rent, staring out at the storm like it might explain why her personal life had the emotional warmth of a tax audit. A knock tapped against the glass wall of her office. "Come in," she called. The door opened and her assistant Harper leaned inside. Harper was all freckles, messy curls, and the kind of bright-eyed curiosity that made Isla feel about 100 years old. "You're still here," Harper said. "It's 9:30. "That's exactly my point." Isla turned from the window and leaned back against her desk. Her dark hair fell over one shoulder in a thick wave, glossy and stubbornly untamed despite the expensive haircut she got every 6 weeks. Her face had sharp, confident lines, high cheekbones, a mouth that rarely smiled in meetings but knew how to when she wanted something. "What do you need, Harper?" "Nothing," Harper said, stepping fully into the office. "Actually, I was going to ask you something weird." Isla narrowed her eyes. "Those are always the dangerous ones." Harper grinned and held up her phone. "Do you remember that conversation we had about your dating life?" "I remember you saying it's a tragedy." "I said it's concerning." "Same thing." Harper approached the desk and slid into the chair across from Isla, clearly settling in for a moment. "You work 80 hours a week. The last date you went on was a guy who tried to pitch you crypto halfway through dinner. He was enthusiastic. He tried to explain blockchain using the breadsticks." Ela rubbed her temple. "Fine," she admitted. "It wasn't a great night." Harper leaned forward conspiratorially. "So I signed you up for something." Isla froze. "You did what?" "Before you freak out," Harper said quickly, "it's actually brilliant." That sentence never precedes good news. "It's called 3-date contract." Isla blinked. "That sounds like a lawsuit waiting to happen." Harper turned the phone around and slid it across the desk. "It's experimental dating, structured. People sign up agreeing to exactly 3 dates with one person. No ghosting, no weird games, just escalating connection." Isla stared at the screen. 3-date contract, professional singles, mutually agreed expectations, clear emotional boundaries. It looked suspiciously like something she would design for business negotiations. "Why would anyone agree to that?" she asked. Harper shrugged. "Because modern dating is a flaming dumpster fire." Fair point. Isla skimmed the page. Date 1, conversation and chemistry. Date 2, vulnerability and attraction. Date 3, decision point. After that, the pair either walk away or continue freely. 3 steps. Clear structure, controlled escalation. God damn it. It actually made sense. Harper. "Yes?" "You signed me up?" "I submitted your profile," Harper corrected. Isla exhaled slowly. "Please tell me you didn't write anything humiliating." Harper smiled. "I described you as brilliant, intimidating, devastatingly attractive, and emotionally constipated." Isla closed her eyes. Harper. "What? You cannot tell strangers I'm emotionally constipated." "Fine," Harper said. "I also said you're secretly passionate." Ela opened one eye. "You did?" Harper winked. "Marketing." Isla looked back at the phone screen. Her profile sat there waiting. A photo Harper had clearly stolen from a company gala. Ela stood in a black dress that hugged her hips and waist, the fabric sleek and unforgiving. Her skin glowed warm against the dark color. Her eyes looked sharp, confident, slightly dangerous. The caption beneath it read, "Isla Monroe, 32 founder, negotiates $1 million deals and still believes chemistry should feel like fire." Isla snorted. "That is ridiculous. You like it?" She did. That annoyed her. "What happens now?" Isla asked. Harper checked the app. "Well," she said slowly, "someone matched you." Isla's stomach did something strange. "Already?" "Who?" Harper turned the phone around again. The man staring back from the screen looked like trouble in a very specific way. "Rowan Hale." 34, architect, tall, broad shoulders, dark hair that looked permanently one strong wind away from chaos. His jaw carried rough stubble like he forgot to shave because he had better things to do. His mouth held a crooked half-smile that suggested confidence with just enough arrogance to make it interesting. But it was his eyes that made Isla pause. Dark, steady, direct, like a man who noticed things. Jesus, Harper murmured. That man looks like he knows exactly how to ruin someone's life. Isla forced her expression neutral. He's attractive. That's the most robotic description you could possibly give. He is. The profile continued. Rowan Hale builds structures that last decades. Recently realized his dating life collapses faster than cheap scaffolding. Curious about controlled experiments in attraction, Isla laughed quietly. That's clever. Right? Harper said. He sounds like your male counterpart. God help him. A notification popped up on the screen. Message from Rowan Hale. Isla's pulse ticked upward. Harper gasped dramatically. Oh my God, it's happening. Calm down. Open it. Isla tapped the message. Rowan, 3 dates feels like an oddly reasonable contract for something usually chaotic. If we're doing this properly, I assume we should negotiate terms. Isla felt something warm stir in her chest. God damn it. She typed back. Isla, I appreciate a man who treats dating like a strategic agreement. 3 dots appeared almost instantly. Good. I hate wasting time pretending we don't know what we're doing. Isla leaned back in her chair. Across from her, Harper clutched a pillow like she was watching a live sports match. Is he funny? Harper whispered. Quiet. Another message. First term. Date 1 should be neutral territory. Good drinks. No distractions. Conversation heavy. Isla smiled slightly. He was playing along perfectly. Second term. Radical honesty. No pretending we're not evaluating chemistry. Harper mouthed, oh my God, Isla typed. Agreed. 3 dots again. A pause. Then, Rowan, third term. If the chemistry is strong, we don't pretend it isn't. Isla stared at the screen. Something electric moved through her body, slow and sharp. The kind of tension that felt like standing too close to lightning. Harper leaned across the desk. What did he say? Isla turned the phone around. Harper read it and slapped the desk. Oh, that man is dangerous. Isla's lips curved. Yes. Yes, he probably was. She typed slowly this time. Those terms seem fair. The response came immediately. Good. Another message followed. Date 1, Friday night. I'll send the location. Isla watched the typing bubble disappear. Then one last message appeared. Looking forward to discovering whether the experiment works. Isla set the phone down on the desk. The office felt suddenly warmer. Harper stared at her with the expression of someone witnessing a scientific breakthrough. You're going on a date with that man. It appears so. Isla, Harper whispered, that guy looks like he'd make eye contact while undressing someone. Isla gave her a look. That is a wildly specific observation. Am I wrong? Isla thought about Rowan Hale's eyes, dark, focused, intense enough that she could almost feel them even through a photograph. No, she said quietly. Harper grinned. Well, she said, standing up, I'm going home before something dramatic happens. She reached the door and paused. Oh, Harper added, glancing back, you should probably wear something that makes him nervous. The door closed. Isla stood alone again in the quiet office. The rain kept falling outside. She looked down at the phone. 3 dates. A controlled experiment. A stranger with a crooked smile and eyes that looked like trouble. Isla Monroe had negotiated billion-dollar contracts without blinking, but something about this one made her pulse beat harder. She lifted the mug of cold coffee, took a sip, and grimaced. Then she looked back at Rowan Hale's picture. Well, she murmured softly, let's see how dangerous you are. You have not enough humanizer words left. Upgrade your surfer plan. Chapter 2, The First Collision. Friday arrived with a slow, electric tension that clung to Isla Monroe like static. The entire day had been a goddamn distraction. Every meeting dragged. Every email felt pointless. By noon, she had reread Rowan Hale's messages at least 6 times, which irritated her enough to slam her laptop closed and walk a tight circle around her office. She was not someone who got worked up about dates. She negotiated corporate mergers with the emotional composure of a surgeon. She had fired executives twice her age without blinking. She did not sit around thinking about a man she had never met. And yet, the image of Rowan Hale had burned itself into her brain like a brand. Tall, broad shoulders, Dark hair that looked permanently disobedient, that crooked half smile like he was amused by the world and half tempted to wreck it. His eyes were the real problem. They had the unsettling intensity of someone who noticed things other people missed. Someone who looked directly at you and saw through whatever bullshit armor you were wearing. Isla had met men like that before. They were trouble. The good kind. Which made them dangerous. By 5 o'clock, she had finally admitted something to herself. She was looking forward to this. Jesus, she muttered to her reflection in the office mirror. Her reflection looked calm, controlled. Underneath it, her pulse felt like a drum line. By 7:30, she stood outside a bar she had never noticed before. The place sat on a narrow corner street in Capitol Hill. Low lights glowed behind tall windows. The sign above the door read Black Pine in simple gold letters, classy without being pretentious. Exactly the kind of place someone thoughtful would pick, or someone who wanted the conversation to matter. Isla stepped inside. Warm amber light spilled across dark wood and deep green walls. The room hummed with quiet music and low conversation. Couples leaned close across small tables. Glasses clinked softly. The air smelled faintly of cedar and bourbon. Her heels clicked across the floor. She wore a black silk dress tonight. The fabric clung to her body with deliberate elegance, the neckline dipping just enough to hint at cleavage without crossing into obvious territory. The dress hugged her waist and hips before falling smoothly to mid-thigh. Professional seduction. Her dark hair fell loose down her back in thick waves. Gold earrings caught the light when she moved. More than one person glanced her way as she entered. She ignored them. Her attention landed immediately on the man sitting at the bar. Rowan Hale. Even seated, he was unmistakable. He was tall enough that his long legs stretched easily beneath the counter. His shoulders filled out a charcoal button-down shirt in a way that suggested quiet strength rather than gym obsession. His sleeves were rolled to the elbows, revealing strong forearms dusted with dark hair. His hands rested loosely around a glass of whiskey. Large hands. Capable hands. Architect's hands. He turned his head slightly at the sound of her heels. Those dark eyes found her instantly. And just like that, the air shifted. Isla felt it physically. A tightening low in her stomach. A slow spark running along her spine. Rowan looked exactly like his photos, only more dangerous in motion. His jaw carried rough stubble that made him look like he had better things to do than shave every morning. His mouth curved slowly when he saw her. Not a polite smile. Something sharper. Something interested. He stood. Jesus Christ. The man was tall, easily 6'2", maybe 3. His body moved with the loose confidence of someone who knew exactly how much space he occupied. For a moment, neither of them spoke. They simply looked at each other. Rowan's gaze moved over her deliberately. Not crude, not hurried, appreciative. His eyes tracked the line of her hair, the shape of her shoulders, the way the dress fit her waist and hips. When his gaze returned to her face, something dark flickered there. "Well," he said quietly. His voice was deep, rough around the edges like gravel soaked in whiskey. "Fuck." Isla arched one eyebrow. "That's your opening line?" He shook his head slowly, still studying her. "No," Rowan said. "That was my reaction." Isla laughed. The sound surprised both of them. Up close, Rowan smelled like cedarwood and something darker underneath. Clean, masculine, faintly intoxicating. He extended a hand. Rowan. His handshake was warm and firm. His fingers closed around hers with steady confidence, not squeezing but not hesitant either. Electricity ran through her palm. It was subtle, but it was there. "Isla?" His mouth curved again. "Yeah," he said softly. "I figured." They released hands. Neither stepped back. A bartender appeared. "Drink?" "Old-fashioned," Isla said. Rowan nodded approvingly. "Good choice." The bartender moved away. They stood there for a second longer than socially necessary. Rowan leaned one hip against the bar. "So," he said, "first date of the contract." Isla crossed one leg casually over the other. "Are we keeping score?" "Always." She tilted her head slightly. "You seem very confident about this experiment." He studied her face carefully. "I like controlled variables," he said, "except people aren't variables." "No," Rowan agreed. "They're much more interesting." The bartender set Isla's drink down. She took a slow sip. Rowan watched her mouth over the rim of the glass. There was no mistaking it. The attraction between them wasn't subtle. It was thick, dense, like the moment before lightning hits. "So," Isla said, "you build buildings." Rowan nodded. Houses, museums, commercial spaces, things meant to last longer than their architects. That's optimistic. It's the goal. And your dating life, she asked. He snorted. Less structurally sound. Fair. He studied her again. You run a consulting firm. I do. What kind? The kind where people pay me a stupid amount of money to tell them when they're about to make catastrophic decisions. Rowan chuckled. So you prevent disasters. Or redirect them. Interesting. His gaze lingered on her eyes. You strike me as someone who likes control. Isla didn't flinch. I like clarity. Same difference. Not quite. Rowan lifted his glass. You negotiate professionally. Yes. So tell me something honestly. Dangerous request. His eyes gleamed. Are you actually looking for something here? Isla considered him carefully. The room hummed quietly around them. 2 strangers, 3 dates. A contract built on curiosity. Yes, she said. Rowan's eyebrows lifted slightly. Yeah? I'm curious, she said. About what? Chemistry. The word hung between them. Rowan's gaze darkened. He set his glass down slowly. Good, he said, because so am I. They moved to a table near the window. Conversation came easily after that. Too easily. Rowan was sharp, observant, funny in a dry, dangerous way that kept catching her off guard. He told stories about impossible construction projects, clients with ridiculous expectations, and the strange satisfaction of watching a building rise from an empty patch of dirt. Isla told him about negotiations that had nearly exploded, CEOs who underestimated her, and the quiet thrill of dismantling someone's argument piece by piece. The drinks kept coming. So did the tension. At one point, Rowan leaned back in his chair and looked at her like he was studying a blueprint. You're not what I expected. Isla sipped her drink. And what exactly did you expect? Someone colder. Her eyebrow lifted. You think I'm warm? No, he said immediately. Not warm. He leaned forward slightly. But you're alive. Isla felt that low spark again. Careful, she said. You might start complimenting me. Don't get ahead of yourself. She laughed again. God, it felt good. By the time they finished their second drink, the conversation had shifted. Closer. Quieter. Rowan's voice dropped slightly. So, he said, contract terms. Isla leaned her elbow on the table. Yes? Date 1, he said. Conversation and chemistry. She held his gaze. And? He looked at her mouth briefly before answering. I'd say the conversation is going well. And the chemistry? Rowan exhaled slowly. Is not subtle. Isla felt heat spread across her skin. He wasn't wrong. Every time their knees brushed under the table, it sent a small shock through her body. Every time his eyes dropped to her mouth, she noticed. You're very direct, she said. No point pretending. She leaned closer. How refreshing. For a moment, neither of them spoke. The air between them felt thick, heavy with something unsaid. Rowan's voice dropped even lower. Tell me something, Isla. Yes? If this wasn't a structured experiment, he leaned forward slightly. What would you be doing right now? Her pulse jumped. Isla held his gaze. Probably making a very reckless decision. His mouth curved slowly. Same. The tension snapped tight, not acted on, just acknowledged. Rowan leaned back again and dragged a hand through his dark hair. Fuck, he muttered softly. Isla smiled into her drink. You're thinking it too, he said. Oh, absolutely. Good. He looked at her like a man studying a fire he might eventually step into. And we still have 2 more dates, Rowan added. Isla met his gaze. Yes, she said quietly. We do. Outside, the rain had started again. Inside Black Pine, the space between them felt charged, like the beginning of something neither of them intended to stop. Chapter 3, Heat Beneath the Surface. The rain had not let up by the time they stepped outside. Seattle at night carried a particular kind of mood when storms rolled through. The pavement glistened under streetlights. Cars hissed past on wet asphalt. Cold air moved through the narrow streets like a restless animal. Isla paused under the awning of black pine. Rowan stood beside her, tall and relaxed, hands shoved loosely into his pockets. The light from the bar spilled across his face, catching the hard lines of his jaw and the quiet intensity in his eyes. They had been talking for nearly 2 hours. 2 drinks had turned into 4. Neither of them had even glanced at their phones. That alone said something. You're quiet, Rowan said. Isla glanced at him. Just thinking. That sounds dangerous. Usually is. He smiled faintly. The silence between them wasn't awkward. It hummed instead, like a wire stretched tight. The rain came down harder for a moment, rattling against the metal edge of the awning. Rowan tipped his head toward the street. You drive? I walked. He blinked. In this weather? It's 10 minutes. That's optimistic. I like walking. Rowan considered that. Then he shrugged. I parked 2 blocks over. Isla watched him. You offering a ride? I'm offering a roof. That crooked smile returned. Don't read too much into it. She held his gaze. Oh, I'm absolutely reading into it. Good. He stepped away from the awning and into the rain. Isla hesitated half a second before following. The cold drizzle kissed her bare shoulders. It soaked quickly into Rowan's dark shirt, outlining the broad shape of his back as he walked ahead of her. He slowed slightly, matching her stride. They walked side by side down the sidewalk. Streetlights reflected in shallow puddles. Somewhere down the block, a group of people laughed loudly outside another bar. Rowan glanced sideways at her. You're not cold? I run warm. That's convenient. Depends on the situation. He chuckled softly. For a few moments, they walked in silence. Then Rowan spoke again. So, he said, honest question. That sounds ominous. Do you always walk into things this confidently? Isla glanced up at him. Things? New people, new situations. She thought about it. Yes, she said simply. Why? Because hesitation wastes time. Rowan nodded slowly. That checks out. What about you? She asked. He exhaled through his nose. I usually take my time. Except tonight? Except tonight. They reached the corner where Rowan's car sat parked beneath a dim streetlight, a dark gray Audi, practical, clean, quietly expensive. He unlocked it, but didn't open the door yet. Instead, he leaned one shoulder against the car and looked at her. Rain dotted his hair and darkened the collar of his shirt. The fabric clung slightly to his chest, revealing the shape of muscle beneath. Isla noticed. Rowan noticed that she noticed. A slow, knowing heat flickered in his eyes. Tell me something, he said. She crossed her arms lightly. You like asking that. You like answering. Debatable. Rowan studied her face. Are you always this composed? Isla tilted her head. You think I'm composed? You haven't been rattled once tonight. Maybe you're not trying hard enough. His mouth curved. Oh, I'm trying. A pause stretched between them. The air felt thick, heavy, like something inevitable was inching closer. Rowan looked down briefly, then back up at her. You realize something, right? Probably. This whole contract idea, he gestured vaguely between them, it doesn't actually stop anything. Isla's pulse ticked faster. Stop what? He held her gaze. This. The word hung in the space between them. Rain pattered softly around them. For a moment, neither moved. Then Isla stepped closer. Not much. Just enough that the distance between them shrank to something intimate. Rowan's eyes darkened. You're dangerous, he said quietly. You mentioned that already. Yeah, he murmured. But I'm realizing I like it. She looked up at him. His presence this close felt different, bigger, warmer. She could see the tiny lines at the corners of his eyes, the faint scar near his eyebrow, the slow rise and fall of his chest. You're not exactly safe yourself, she said. Good. Their gazes locked again. Rowan's voice dropped. You know what the problem is right now? Isla didn't look away. What? I'm trying very hard to respect the structure of this experiment. Her heartbeat picked up. And? And you're standing very close to me. Isla smiled faintly. That does seem inconvenient. Rowan laughed softly under his breath. Jesus. He ran a hand through his rain-damp hair. You do this on purpose. Do what? Look at people like that. Like what? Like you already know the answer. Isla shrugged slightly. Maybe I do. A car passed behind them, tires hissing on wet pavement. Rowan leaned closer. Not touching, just closer. Tell me the truth, he said. All right. Are you thinking about kissing me right now? Isla didn't hesitate. Yes, the honesty landed between them like a spark hitting gasoline. Rowan exhaled slowly. Fuck. She laughed softly. You asked. I did. His eyes dropped briefly to her mouth. Problem is, he continued quietly, if I start that I'm not entirely confident, I'll stop. The tension in Isla's body tightened. Her voice stayed calm. Sounds like a risk. It is. The rain softened. Rowan's jaw flexed slightly. Second problem, he added. What's that? This is only date 1. Isla considered him. Then she took a step back. Not far, just enough to break the immediate gravity between them. Rowan blinked. You're backing away? For now. Why? Because anticipation is powerful. His eyes narrowed slightly. You're enjoying this. A little. Rowan laughed. You're ruthless. Professionally. Sure. He opened the passenger door for her. Get in before I change my mind. She slid into the seat. The interior smelled faintly like leather and cedar. Rowan walked around the car and climbed into the driver's seat. For a moment, neither spoke. The quiet felt different now. Charged, Rowan started the engine. "So," he said casually, "your place or a mutual drop-off point?" Isla raised an eyebrow. "Direct. Efficient." "Let's not skip steps," she said. He nodded. They drove through the wet city streets. Music played quietly from the speakers, some low blues track that matched the storm outside. Rowan drove smoothly, one hand resting loosely on the wheel. Isla watched him from the corner of her eye, strong hands, calm posture, focused gaze. The man radiated control in a way she found disturbingly attractive. After a few minutes, he spoke again. "Second date," he said. She glanced at him. "Already planning? Strategizing. What do you have in mind?" He turned down a quiet residential street. "I cook." That surprised her. "You cook?" "I'm an architect, not a caveman." "I never said otherwise." He smiled slightly. "My place. Dinner." Isla considered the idea private, intimate, potentially dangerous. "Bold move," she said. "Date 2 is about vulnerability and attraction," Rowan replied. "Seems appropriate." She nodded slowly. "When?" "Wednesday." "You're confident I'll say yes." He parked outside her building, then he turned toward her. "I am." Their eyes met again. The air inside the car felt warmer than it should. Isla opened the door but paused before stepping out. "Rowan?" "Yeah?" She leaned slightly toward him, close enough that he could feel the warmth of her breath. "You're right about one thing." His voice lowered. "What's that?" "This experiment isn't stopping anything." Their faces were only inches apart now. The tension between them pulled tight like a rope about to snap. Rowan's hand shifted slightly on the steering wheel. His voice came out rough. "Isla?" She smiled slowly. Then she stepped out of the car. The door shut. Rowan sat there for a second, staring at the passenger seat she had just left. Rain tapped softly against the windshield. He dragged a hand down his face and laughed quietly. Jesus fucking Christ. Across the sidewalk, Isla glanced back once. Rowan was still sitting there, still watching her. The heat between them hadn't faded, not even slightly, and they still had 2 dates left. Chapter 4, Controlled Burn Wednesday night arrived slower than either of them expected. For Isla Monroe, the days between the first and second date stretched with a frustrating awareness she couldn't quite shake. Every time she opened her phone, she half expected a message from Rowan, something cocky or curious or mildly provocative. He didn't text constantly. That alone made him interesting. Instead, there were only a few brief messages. "Rowan, dinner. 7 p.m. My place. Sending now." And later that afternoon, "You drink red wine?" "Of course. Good. Simple. Direct. No nonsense." It felt deliberate. By the time Wednesday evening arrived, Isla had already changed outfits twice. The realization irritated the hell out of her. She stood in front of the mirror in her apartment bedroom, studying her reflection critically. The final choice was a deep emerald dress that wrapped around her body like it had been designed specifically to make men lose focus. The fabric hugged her waist and hips, the neckline dipping just enough to tease. Elegant, confident, not trying too hard. Her dark hair fell loose over one shoulder. Gold earrings glinted faintly against her neck. She looked dangerous. "Good," she muttered. If Rowan Hale thought tonight would be easy, he had another thing coming. Rowan's building sat on the edge of the waterfront. Modern architecture. Glass and steel, clean lines, quiet wealth. Isla stepped into the elevator and rode up to the 12th floor. Her heels clicked softly against the polished tile as she walked down the hallway toward his door. Her pulse had a steady rhythm now, not nervous, anticipatory. She knocked. The door opened almost immediately. Rowan Hale stood there in a dark gray t-shirt and black jeans. Isla had a very immediate, very physical reaction. The casual clothes did him no favors. They made him worse. The shirt stretched comfortably across his chest and shoulders, outlining muscle that hadn't come from vanity workouts but from actual physical work. His hair was slightly messy, like he had pushed his hands through it a few times already. He looked relaxed, comfortable, infuriatingly attractive. For a second, he just looked at her. His eyes traveled slowly over her dress, down the curve of her waist and hips, then back up again. A low whistle slipped out before he could stop it. "Jesus," Isla arched an eyebrow. "That's twice now." "You look incredible," he said plainly. No clever response? Not tonight. She smiled faintly. Rowan stepped aside. "Come in." The apartment matched him perfectly. Minimalist without being cold, wide windows looking out over the dark water of the bay, soft lighting, wood floors, a large kitchen island dominating the open space. Music played quietly from somewhere in the room, and the smell, garlic, butter, herbs, something roasting in the oven. Isla inhaled. That smells dangerous. Rowan walked toward the kitchen. Hope you're hungry. Starving. He poured 2 glasses of red wine and handed one to her. Their fingers brushed briefly. The contact was small. The effect was not. That familiar spark jumped instantly between them. Rowan noticed. He took a sip of wine, watching her carefully over the rim of the glass. "You're doing that thing again," he said. "What thing?" "Looking calm while you're clearly thinking something else." Isla leaned casually against the counter. "And what do you think I'm thinking?" "That dress should be illegal," she laughed. "You're very subtle tonight." "I gave up subtle with you around." "Fair." She glanced toward the stove. "What are you making?" "Pasta," he said. "Homemade sauce." "Impressive. I try." He moved around the kitchen with easy familiarity, stirring a pan, checking the oven, grabbing a plate. Isla watched him. There was something deeply attractive about competence. Rowan moved like a man who was comfortable in his own space, someone who didn't need to prove anything. At one point, he glanced up and caught her watching him. "You're staring." "Observing." "Same thing." She took another sip of wine. "You cook often?" "Whenever I can." "Why architecture then?" Rowan leaned against the counter across from her. "Because building something from nothing is addictive." His gaze lingered on her. "Kind of like chemistry." There it was again, that quiet charge humming between them. Ela felt warmth bloom low in her stomach. Dinner itself was good. Really good. They ate at the kitchen island, plates between them, conversation moving easily between serious topics and playful insults. Rowan talked about one of his current projects, a museum renovation that had turned into a bureaucratic nightmare. Isla told him about a corporate negotiation where 2 CEOs nearly came to blows over a merger clause. At one point, Rowan laughed so hard he had to put his glass down. "Jesus," he said, "remind me never to negotiate against you." "Smart decision." "You'd destroy me." "Professionally." He smirked. "Sure." By the time they finished eating, the tension in the room had shifted. The conversation slowed. The space between them felt smaller. Rowan stood and carried the plates to the sink. Ella watched him rinse them off. "You're unusually quiet," he said without turning around. "I'm thinking." Again, with the dangerous thinking. He dried his hands and turned toward her. They were standing closer now, only a few feet apart. Rowan's voice lowered slightly. "All right," he said. "Let's talk about the contract." Ela folded her arms lightly. "Date 2. Vulnerability and attraction." She held his gaze. "Right." Rowan leaned back against the counter. "So," he said, "what scares you?" The question caught her off guard. She blinked once. "That's a heavy question." "You agreed to radical honesty." "Fair." She considered the answer. "Stagnation," she said finally. Rowan nodded slowly. "You?" He didn't hesitate. "Wasting time." Their eyes locked. The honesty between them felt raw. Rowan pushed away from the counter and stepped closer. Only a foot between them now. "Second part of the date," he said quietly. "Attraction." Isla's heartbeat picked up. "That part seems obvious." "Yeah." His gaze dropped briefly to her mouth, then returned to her eyes. "You've been thinking about kissing me since you walked in." It wasn't a question. Ella tilted her head. "You're confident." "I'm observant." She smiled slowly. "Maybe." Rowan's voice dropped even further. "I've been thinking about it since Monday." The confession landed heavy. Something hot moved through Isla's chest. "You lasted longer than I expected." He chuckled softly. "Barely." The distance between them disappeared as Rowan stepped closer. Now they were standing almost chest to chest. Ela could feel the warmth radiating off his body. Her voice came out quieter than she intended. "So what happens now?" Rowan looked down at her. Dark eyes, focused, hungry in a restrained kind of way. "Now," he said slowly, "we test the theory." His hand lifted slightly, not touching her, just hovering near her waist, giving her time to stop him if she wanted. She didn't. The contact was light when it finally happened. His hand settled gently at her waist, fingers warm through the fabric of her dress. Isla's breath caught. Rowan watched her face carefully. "You okay?" "Very?" The tension snapped. Rowan leaned down. The kiss started slow. Testing. Their lips met softly at first, a careful exploration that lasted barely a second before something deeper took hold. Isla felt heat rush through her body. Rowan's hand tightened slightly at her waist as the kiss deepened. It wasn't frantic. It wasn't sloppy. It was controlled fire. His mouth moved against hers with steady confidence. The kind that made her pulse race and her thoughts scatter. Ila's hand slid up his chest, fingers curling lightly into the fabric of his shirt. Rowan exhaled against her mouth. "Fuck," he murmured. The word vibrated between them. They pulled apart slightly, just enough to breathe. Rowan rested his forehead lightly against hers. "That," he said quietly, "was a mistake." Ila's lips curved. Didn't feel like one. His thumb brushed slowly along the side of her waist. That's the problem." She leaned closer again. "You worried about the contract?" "Little bit." Isla's voice dropped to a whisper. "Rowan, yeah? We're only halfway through it." He laughed softly, a low, rough sound. "Yeah," he said. "That's what scares me." Chapter 5, Fault Lines. The moment after the kiss hung in the air like heat trapped under glass, Rowan's forehead rested lightly against Isla's, his hand still firm at her waist. Neither of them moved right away. The quiet hum of the apartment filled the silence, the faint music still drifting through the room, the distant sound of water slapping against the docks far below the windows. Isla's pulse was still running hard. The kiss had been brief, controlled. But it had cracked something open. Rowan exhaled slowly. That was probably inevitable. Isla tilted her head slightly, their noses brushing. Probably. His hand flexed at her waist before he forced himself to step back. Distance returned. Not much, but enough that the air cooled slightly. Rowan ran a hand through his hair, pacing once toward the window before turning back to her. "You realize something," he said. "What's that?" "If this were a normal date, we'd already be making significantly worse decisions." Isla leaned against the counter again, arms crossing lightly. "And you're resisting?" "Trying to. Why?" Rowan studied her for a long moment. His voice came quieter this time. "Because I like where this is going." The honesty landed square between them. No jokes, no deflection, just truth. Isla felt something tighten in her chest. She had expected arrogance, playful flirtation, maybe reckless confidence. What she hadn't expected was restraint. "What about you?" Rowan asked. "Am I resisting?" "Yeah," she thought about it for a moment. Then she shrugged. "Not very hard." He laughed. "Jesus." Rowan walked toward the kitchen island and picked up his wine glass again, taking a slow sip. The movement gave him something to do with his hands. Because right now, his instincts were telling him to walk back across the room and kiss her again. Longer. Slower. Less controlled. He suspected that would complicate things. He glanced up. Isla was watching him again. God. The woman looked unfair tonight. The deep green dress hugged her body perfectly. The soft lighting in the apartment caught the shine in her dark hair, the curve of her cheekbones, the steady intelligence in her eyes. She looked like someone who knew exactly how powerful she was, and didn't apologize for it. "That look again," he said. "What look?" "Like you're analyzing a situation." "I am. That's terrifying." She pushed off the counter and walked slowly toward the windows. The city lights reflected in the glass behind her. How the bay stretched dark and restless beyond. "You built a very interesting experiment," she said. Rowan raised an eyebrow. "You mean the contract?" "Yes." "What about it?" "It creates pressure." "How so?" She turned toward him. "Because now everything matters more." Rowan tilted his head. "Explain." "If we were just casually dating," she said, "we'd probably take things slower emotionally. Less expectation. Less structure." "True. But this," she gestured lightly between them, "this is accelerated." He nodded slowly. 3 dates, he said. 3 moments to decide if something is real. Exactly. Rowan set his glass down. "So what are you thinking?" Isla held his gaze. "I'm thinking we're playing with fire." A slow grin spread across his face. "Good." She rolled her eyes slightly. "You enjoy this." "I enjoy honest tension." "And what if it blows up?" Rowan shrugged. "Then at least it wasn't boring." Isla laughed softly. There was something refreshing about him. Rowan Hale didn't seem afraid of the emotional chaos most people tried to avoid. He stepped closer again, though this time he kept a little space between them. "All right," he said. "Your turn." "My turn? For a real question." She folded her arms again. "Fine." Rowan's voice softened. "When was the last time you actually let someone get close?" The question hit deeper than she expected. For a second, Isla didn't answer. Not because she didn't know, but because the truth wasn't particularly flattering. Years, she said finally. Rowan nodded slowly. That long? Yes. Why? She shrugged. Busy, selective, occasionally stubborn. All three sound accurate. Thanks. Rowan leaned one shoulder against the wall near the window. And here you are now, he said. Trying chapter 6, The Edge of the Line. Rowan didn't sleep much that night after Isla left. Not because anything dramatic had happened. If anything, the problem was how little had happened. The kiss had been brief, controlled, measured, but it had lodged itself somewhere behind his ribs like a splinter he couldn't stop touching. By midnight, he was standing on his balcony with a glass of bourbon, staring out over the dark water while the city lights flickered across the bay. 3 dates, he muttered to himself. The structure had seemed like a clever idea when he signed up for the damn app, a way to cut through the bullshit. No ghosting. No meaningless weeks of texting. No pretending two adults weren't evaluating whether they wanted each other. Efficient, clear, logical. What the system hadn't accounted for was Isla Monroe. Because the woman didn't just spark attraction. She lit slow-burning fuses. Isla didn't sleep much either, not for the same reason. She was used to keeping control of situations. She built her entire career on reading people, anticipating moves, staying 3 steps ahead. But Rowan Hale had a strange effect on her. He didn't push too hard. He didn't chase. He didn't retreat either. Instead, he matched her, step for step. Which meant when she kissed him, the reaction had been instant and mutual. No hesitation, no confusion, just heat. She lay awake in her apartment staring at the ceiling. That kiss replayed itself in slow, frustrating detail. The warmth of his hand at her waist, the steady pressure of his mouth against hers, the way he'd stopped himself afterward. That part irritated her, because she understood exactly why he'd done it, and because she respected the hell out of it. Fuck, she muttered. Date 3 was still coming. Sunday afternoon arrived bright and clear. Rowan stood outside a small park cafe watching the sunlight ripple across the lake. He had suggested something simple for their final contract date, coffee. A walk. No alcohol. He suspected they'd both appreciate the clarity. He spotted Isla the moment she stepped through the park gate. Even from 50 feet away, she commanded attention. Today, she wore dark jeans, ankle boots, and a fitted black sweater that hugged her waist and shoulders in a way that made Rowan's brain briefly forget how language worked. Her hair was pulled back loosely, a few strands escaping around her face. Effortless, composed, devastating. She walked toward him with steady confidence. Rowan couldn't stop the slow smile spreading across his face. Well, he said as she approached. 3rd date. Isla raised an eyebrow. You look suspiciously pleased about that. I'm curious. About? He gestured lightly between them. What happens next? She took the coffee he handed her. Their fingers brushed again. The spark was still there, not weaker. If anything, it had sharpened. They began walking along the lakeside path. For the first few minutes, they didn't say much. The quiet felt comfortable. Then Isla spoke. Rowan nervous? You can tell? Yes. Yes, that's mildly terrifying. It's a professional hazard. They walked a few more steps. All right, Rowan said. I'll admit it. Admit what? I don't know how this ends. Isla glanced at him. Most people don't. True, he said. But the whole point of the contract is a decision. She nodded slowly. Yes. A couple jogged past them on the path. Leaves rustled in the trees above. Rowan looked out over the water before speaking again. Let's review the experiment, he said. Isla smiled faintly. Of course. Date 1, Rowan said, ticking it off with a finger. Conversation and chemistry. Successful, clearly. He looked sideways at her. Date 2. Vulnerability and attraction. Also successful. Isla took a slow sip of her coffee. You're very confident in your results. Hard not to be. They reached a small wooden bridge crossing a narrow inlet of the lake. Rowan leaned against the railing. Isla stood beside him. For a moment, they simply watched the water move beneath them. Then Rowan spoke again. So here we are. Date 3. The decision. Isla turned slightly toward him. What do you want the answer to be? Rowan didn't hesitate. You. The word came out blunt and certain. Isla's eyes narrowed slightly. That was fast. No point pretending. He met her gaze directly. I like you. Bold claim. You're brilliant. You're sharp as hell. You challenge everything I say, and the chemistry between us is borderline ridiculous. She laughed softly. That's quite a pitch. Not finished. He stepped closer. Also, he added quietly, I've been thinking about that kiss all week. Her pulse kicked. Rowan's voice dropped a notch. And the only reason I stopped that night was because I didn't want to screw up the experiment. Isla held his gaze. You think continuing would have screwed it up? Maybe. And now? He shrugged. Now we know the results. The tension returned, familiar, charged. The lake breeze lifted a strand of Isla's hair across her cheek. Rowan reached out without thinking and brushed it gently behind her ear. The touch lingered half a second too long. Her breath shifted slightly. You're very sure of yourself, she said. Not really. Then why say all this? Because honesty was part of the deal. Isla studied him. Rowan looked steady, grounded, not performing, not manipulating, just telling the truth. She exhaled slowly. All right, she said. Your turn. My turn? For my answer. He nodded. Fair. She leaned her elbows lightly against the railing beside him. When Harper signed me up for this stupid app, Isla said, I assumed it would be entertaining at best. Rowan chuckled. That's reassuring. I expected a few awkward conversations and a polite exit. But, she looked at him, but then I met you. The words carried a quiet weight. Rowan's chest tightened slightly. You're not easy, she continued. I'm aware. You're calm when most people would try harder to impress me. I figured that would annoy you. It did. She smiled faintly, but it also made me curious. Rowan waited. And then there's the chemistry, she added, which you've already mentioned. Several times. They both laughed. Then the laughter faded. The moment returned. Here's the problem, Isla said softly. What problem? She met his eyes. This contract is supposed to simplify things. Right. But it doesn't. Rowan nodded slowly. No, he said. It doesn't. The silence stretched. A jogger crossed the bridge behind them. The world kept moving. Rowan's voice came quieter now. So what's the verdict? Isla took a breath. Her heart was beating harder than she liked to admit. Your trouble, she said. That's not an answer. It's part of one. He waited. She stepped closer. Now they stood inches apart again. The tension between them had grown familiar, like standing near a bonfire. Warm. Dangerous. Rowan, she said quietly. Yeah? I don't usually continue experiments once they get complicated. His eyes softened slightly. But, she smiled slowly, but this one is interesting. That crooked grin returned to his face. Interesting enough? Isla reached up and rested a hand lightly against his chest. His heartbeat was strong beneath her palm. Interesting enough, she said, to keep going. Rowan's breath left him in a quiet laugh. Well, he murmured, fuck the contract then. Isla tilted her head. Technically, we completed it. True. He glanced down at her hand on his chest, then back at her eyes. So what happens now? She didn't answer immediately. Instead, she leaned forward and kissed him. This time, the kiss wasn't cautious. It wasn't restrained. It carried the weight of 3 dates, worth of tension finally snapping loose. Rowan's hand slid to her waist again, pulling her closer as the kiss deepened. The lake breeze moved around them. People walked past. Neither noticed. When they finally broke apart, both of them were breathing harder. Rowan rested his forehead lightly against hers again. Well, he said quietly, that seems like a clear decision. Isla smiled against his mouth. Yes, she said, it does. Chapter 7. After the contract, the kiss on the bridge had changed the air between them. Before, everything had been tension, pressure building in careful increments, controlled sparks that both of them pretended not to fully act on. Now the spark had become a flame. Rowan and Isla walked back toward the cafe slowly, neither in a hurry to break the strange quiet that had settled between them. Not awkward. Just different. Real. Rowan's hand brushed hers once as they walked. The contact lingered. Neither pulled away. All right, Rowan said eventually, glancing sideways at her. So the contract is officially finished? Isla sipped the last of her coffee. Yes. And we're still here. So it would appear. He chuckled under his breath. Most efficient dating experiment I've ever been part of. You've done many? 0. Good. They reached the small outdoor patio near the cafe. The Sunday crowd had thinned, leaving only a few scattered tables occupied by couples and laptop workers. Rowan pulled out a chair for her. Isla raised an eyebrow. You're full of surprises. I contain multitudes. Dangerous statement. They sat across from each other. Without the structure of the contract hanging over them, the conversation felt strangely open, unscripted. Rowan leaned back in his chair and studied her for a moment. You know something? What? I expected you to bolt after that kiss. Isla blinked. Why? You strike me as someone who prefers clean exits. She considered that. You're not entirely wrong, but you stayed. Yes. Why? Isla met his gaze. Because you didn't push. Rowan's brow furrowed slightly. That's a low bar. No, she said quietly. It isn't. For a moment he didn't reply. Instead, he watched her carefully. Isla Monroe was intimidating in the best possible way. Sharp eyes, quick mind, confidence that filled the space around her. But occasionally there were glimpses of something quieter underneath. Guarded. Careful. Rowan suspected very few people ever saw that part. You know, he said slowly, most people would assume you're impossible to rattle. She laughed softly. Most people don't know me. Fair. A breeze moved through the patio, rustling the leaves of a nearby tree. Rowan leaned forward slightly. So what happens now? Isla tilted her head. You're asking me? I'm asking the woman who runs negotiations for a living. She smiled faintly. Strategically speaking, yes. We gather more information, meaning we keep seeing each other. Rowan grinned. That sounds suspiciously like dating. Careful, she said. You might scare yourself. I'm already past that. He watched her expression shift, just slightly. Something warm passed through her eyes. Rowan realized he liked that look. A lot. So tell me something real, he said. Isla raised an eyebrow. You like those questions. They're efficient. All right. He leaned his elbows on the table. What do you actually want from a relationship? The question lingered in the air. Isla didn't answer immediately. Most people gave easy answers to that kind of thing. Companionship, fun, stability. But Rowan didn't seem interested in easy. I want someone who doesn't waste my time, she said finally. That seems reasonable. I want someone who challenges me, Rowan nodded. Dangerous. And I want someone who doesn't panic when things get complicated. He smiled slowly. Well, that's promising. She narrowed her eyes slightly. You're very confident that you qualify. I'm cautiously optimistic. Ela laughed. The sound was warm and unguarded. Rowan found himself staring at her again. God, the woman had no idea how magnetic she was. Your turn, she said. My turn. What do you want? Rowan leaned back in his chair. The question was easier than he expected. Someone interesting, he said. You're setting a low bar. I'm not finished. He looked directly at her. I want someone who's honest even when it's inconvenient. Fair, and someone who actually shows up. Isla's brow furrowed slightly. That sounds specific. Experience talking. She studied him. You've been burned. Everyone has. True. Rowan shrugged. But I'd rather risk it again than waste years avoiding it. The honesty in that statement settled between them. Isla felt something in her chest tighten slightly. There was a quiet strength in Rowan's perspective. Not cynical. Not naive, just grounded. So, Rowan said, breaking the silence, what's the verdict? About? About me. Isla smiled slowly. You're persistent. Architectural integrity. Of course. She leaned forward slightly. You're also very good at not pretending, Rowan shrugged. Seems inefficient. Which makes you dangerous. Why? Because most people are hiding something. And you think I'm not. I think you're hiding less. Rowan considered that. Probably accurate. Isla's eyes softened just slightly. The moment stretched again. Then Rowan stood up. Walk? He asked. They left the cafe and wandered deeper into the park. The afternoon sun filtered through the trees, casting long shadows across the path. Their shoulders brushed occasionally as they walked. Neither commented on it. Rowan glanced down at her. You know what's funny? What? 3 dates were supposed to give us clarity. And? I feel like I know you better than people I've dated for months. Isla nodded slowly. That's the advantage of honesty. Also terrifying, she smirked. You'll survive. They reached the edge of the lake again. The water moved gently under the afternoon light. Rowan stopped walking. Isla turned toward him. What? He studied her face. I'm glad you didn't walk away after date 1. She raised an eyebrow. You were worried. A while. He chuckled softly. What? Because you looked like someone who might disappear the moment things got real. Isla crossed her arms lightly. And now? Now I think you're still here. Her expression softened. For the moment. Rowan grinned. I'll take it. A breeze lifted her hair again. Without thinking, Rowan reached up and tucked the loose strand behind her ear. The gesture felt strangely natural now. Familiar. Isla's eyes held his. You're very comfortable touching me, she said. Should I not be? Depends. On? Your intentions. Rowan stepped a little closer, his voice lowered. My intentions are pretty straightforward. Oh, I like you. The simplicity of the statement made her laugh quietly. You really do just say things. Less room for confusion. She tilted her head slightly. And what if I told you this might get complicated? Rowan shrugged. Then we'll figure it out. You make it sound easy. It's not. Then why say that? His eyes met hers. Because you're worth the complication. For a moment, Isla didn't reply. The wind moved through the trees again. The water shifted gently behind them. Finally, she exhaled. Well, she said softly, that's a very dangerous thing to say to someone like me. Rowan's mouth curved into that crooked smile again. Good, he said. I'm starting to think you like dangerous. Chapter 8, Uncharted Territory. 2 weeks after the contract ended, Isla Monroe realized something unsettling. She had stopped checking the dating app entirely. Not because she had forgotten about it, because she didn't care anymore. The realization struck her on a Thursday morning while she stood in her office overlooking downtown Seattle. Her laptop sat open on the desk in front of her, a half-written email blinking patiently on the screen. Her phone buzzed. She glanced down. Rowan, lunch today? A small smile tugged at the corner of her mouth before she could stop it. God damn it. 2 weeks ago, she had been evaluating Rowan Hale like a business deal. 3 dates, clear structure, a decision point. Now he texted her at random times, and she looked forward to it. That alone felt like losing ground. Isla typed back. Isla, busy until 3. The response came almost instantly. Dinner then. She stared at the screen for a moment before replying. You're persistent. 3 dots appeared. You like it. She did. Which annoyed her slightly. Rowan leaned back in his chair at the architecture studio, phone still in his hand. Across the large drafting table, his colleague Mateo glanced up from a blueprint. You're smiling, Mateo said. Rowan frowned. No, I'm not. You absolutely are. Mateo leaned back, crossing his arms. That woman again? Rowan sighed. Yeah. Mateo grinned. You've been seeing her, 3 weeks now? 2. And you're already acting like a man who got hit by a truck. Rowan set the phone down. It's not like that. Mateo raised an eyebrow. Oh, really? Yes. Then why did you stare at your phone for 5 straight minutes before answering that message? Rowan didn't respond. Mateo nodded knowingly. Thought so. Rowan dragged a hand through his hair. She's complicated, Mateo snorted. That's architect code for I'm screwed. Rowan couldn't argue with that. Dinner happened at a small restaurant near Isla's office. Not fancy, but good. Rowan was already at the table when she arrived. He stood as she approached. Tonight, she wore a slate gray dress and a black coat, the clean lines emphasizing her tall, confident posture. Her hair fell straight over her shoulders, glossy under the restaurant lighting. Rowan felt that familiar pull in his chest again. He stood and kissed her cheek casually. The contact lingered half a second longer than necessary. You look dangerous tonight, he said. Isla set her coat over the back of her chair. I usually do. Fair point. They sat, a server poured wine. The restaurant hummed with quiet conversation around them. Rowan leaned his elbows on the table. So, he said, tell me something interesting. Isla took a sip of wine. My week has been negotiations, contracts, and one executive meltdown. That does sound entertaining. What about you? Construction delays, Rowan said. City permits, a client who thinks glass walls solve every problem. Do they? No. She smiled faintly. The ease between them had grown quickly over the past couple weeks. Conversation flowed easily. They had gone out for drinks twice, dinner once, a spontaneous late-night walk along the waterfront. Every time the chemistry between them had been obvious, and every time it stopped just short of becoming something else. Rowan had noticed that pattern. He suspected Isla had too. Halfway through dinner, he leaned back in his chair and studied her. You're doing that thing again. What thing? Thinking. I always think. Yes, Rowan said, but this one is specific. She tilted her head. Oh? You're evaluating something. Isla smirked slightly. Maybe. What are the variables? She considered him for a moment. Then she set her glass down. You're patient, Rowan blinked. That's a weird observation. No, she said. It's accurate. How so? You haven't pushed. About what? She gestured lightly between them. This. Rowan leaned back. Should I? That's not what I asked. He looked at her carefully. You want honesty? Always. Rowan exhaled slowly. Because if I push too hard, he said quietly, you'll walk. The truth hung there. Isla didn't immediately respond, because the irritating part was, he was probably right. You read people well, she said finally. Comes with the job. Architect? Architect of bad decisions sometimes. That made her laugh. The tension softened again. After dinner, they walked outside into the cool night air. Seattle's streets were alive with traffic and late evening pedestrians. The city lights shimmered across the wet pavement. They wandered a few blocks without much direction. At one point, Rowan stopped near a quiet intersection. Isla turned toward him. What? He shoved his hands into his coat pockets. You're still analyzing. Probably. What's the conclusion? She looked up at him. Rowan was tall enough that the streetlight caught the angles of his face differently. His jawline looked sharper in the dim light, his eyes darker. She realized something. He wasn't the only one exercising restraint. You're dangerous, she said again. Rowan groaned softly. We've covered that. No, she said. I mean it differently this time. How so? You're patient. Yes. You're calm. I try. And you don't seem intimidated by me. Rowan laughed. Should I be? Most people are. Well, that sounds like their problem. Isla shook her head slightly. You're frustrating. Why? Because I can't figure out your angle. Rowan stepped a little closer. The space between them shrank. My angle is pretty straightforward. Oh, I like spending time with you. That's it? That's it. She searched his face, looking for some sign of manipulation, some hidden strategy, but Rowan Hale looked genuine, infuriatingly so. You know what the worst part is? She said quietly. What? I believe you. Rowan's expression softened. Good. The wind moved through the street again. Isla crossed her arms lightly. You're not curious about something? She asked. Always. Why haven't we slept together yet? Rowan blinked once. Then he laughed under his breath. That's a very direct question. You like direct? Yes, I do. He rubbed the back of his neck. All right, he said. Honest answer? Of course. Rowan looked down at her. The streetlight reflected faintly in her dark eyes. Because if we start that, he said slowly, things will change. And that's bad? No? Then what? He shrugged. It's just significant. Isla studied him. You're being careful. Yes. With me? Yes. The honesty in that statement hit harder than she expected. Most men she dated were eager, pushy, trying to move things along as quickly as possible. Rowan wasn't doing that. He was waiting, which made her wonder something dangerous. What if I told you I'm tired of careful? She said quietly. Rowan's gaze sharpened. That sounds like a loaded statement. It might be. The tension between them thickened. Cars passed behind them. A couple walked by on the opposite sidewalk, but neither of them moved. Rowan's voice lowered slightly. Isla? Yes? You know I'm not going anywhere. She looked at him carefully. You're very sure about that. I am. Her pulse quickened slightly. You don't even know where this is going. No, Rowan said, but I know I want to find out. The simplicity of the statement disarmed her again. For a moment she didn't respond. Then she stepped closer. Close enough that she could feel the warmth radiating from his body. Rowan's breath slowed. You're testing me again, he said. Possibly. Her hand lifted slightly, resting against his chest. The steady beat of his heart thudded beneath her palm. Rowan didn't move. Isla, he murmured. Yes? You're playing a dangerous game. Her lips curved slowly. I thought you liked dangerous. He did, which was exactly the problem. Chapter 9, Pressure Points. Rowan didn't move when Ila's hand settled against his chest. But every nerve in his body woke the hell up. The city hummed around them. Cars rolled past. Distant music drifted out of a bar somewhere down the street. A cool night breeze slipped between buildings and tugged lightly at Isla's hair. None of it mattered. All Rowan could focus on was the warmth of her palm over his heart. You're doing it again, he said quietly. Her eyes lifted to his. Doing what? Standing too close. She tilted her head slightly. And you're not stopping me. That's because stopping you would require significantly more self-control than I currently possess. The corner of her mouth curved upward. Honest. Always. Isla's fingers shifted slightly against his chest, the smallest movement, but Rowan felt it like a live wire. You're still being careful, she said. Yes. Even now. Yes. Why? Rowan exhaled slowly through his nose, because if he kissed her right now, there was a good chance they wouldn't make it to the end of the block before things escalated into something neither of them had planned. Because Isla Monroe was not someone you rushed unless you wanted to watch the entire thing explode. And because, if he was being brutally honest with himself, he liked what was happening between them too much to screw it up. "You really want the answer?" he said. "I always do." Rowan's voice dropped. "Because you're worth slowing down for." The words landed harder than either of them expected. For a moment, Isla didn't move, didn't blink. Then she shook her head once, almost amused. "That's a dangerous sentence." "Why?" "Because most people don't say things like that unless they're trying to manipulate someone." Rowan chuckled softly. "Then it's a good thing I'm not most people." Her eyes studied him carefully, looking for cracks, looking for hesitation. What she found instead was steady patience. That irritated her and intrigued her. "You know what the problem is?" she said. Rowan raised an eyebrow. "Only one?" "You're calm. I've been told. You're patient. So far. And you don't react the way most men do when I push." Rowan smiled slowly. "You're testing me again." "Of course I am. What's the goal of the test?" She leaned slightly closer. "Seeing how far you'll go." Rowan's eyes darkened a shade. "That's a dangerous experiment. I like dangerous. You've mentioned." The tension between them thickened. Rowan's hand lifted almost unconsciously, settling lightly at her waist, not pulling her closer, just there. The contact made her breath shift slightly. "You see?" she murmured. "What?" "You're not as calm as you pretend." Rowan laughed under his breath. "Isla, I've been trying not to kiss you for the last 5 minutes." Her eyebrows rose. "Only 5? Rough estimate." She studied him. The honesty was still there, unfiltered, which made the whole thing feel real. And that was the dangerous part. Most men approached her like a challenge to conquer. Rowan didn't. He approached her like a person, which made every interaction feel heavier, more significant. "You're thinking again," he said. "Yes." "Care to share?" She hesitated for half a second. Then she said something that surprised both of them. "You're the first person in a long time who hasn't tried to impress me." Rowan shrugged. "Sounds exhausting." "It is." Her hand slid slightly along his chest before falling away. The loss of contact made Rowan immediately aware of how warm her touch had been. "Most men," she continued, "either try to compete with me or intimidate me." "Neither sounds fun." "It isn't." Rowan stepped a little closer. Now there was barely any space left between them. "And what do I do?" he asked. Isla met his gaze. "You just show up." The simplicity of the statement hit him harder than expected. Rowan exhaled quietly. "Well," he said, "that's manageable." A car passed behind them, headlights sweeping briefly across the street. The moment stretched. Rowan's hand tightened slightly at her waist before he caught himself. "All right," he said. "What?" "I have a question." "Of course you do." "Are you trying to seduce me right now?" Isla laughed softly. "That depends." "On?" "How easily you're seduced." Rowan shook his head. "Your trouble." "You knew that already." "Yeah," he said, "but I'm starting to understand the scale of it." They stood there for another quiet second. Then Rowan sighed and stepped back. The sudden space between them felt noticeable. Isla raised an eyebrow. "Retreating?" "Strategic repositioning." "Coward," he grinned. "If I were a coward, I wouldn't still be here." She couldn't argue with that. They resumed walking down the street. The tension between them hadn't disappeared. If anything, it had sharpened. Rowan shoved his hands into his coat pockets. "You know something funny?" "What?" "3 weeks ago we were strangers." "Technically. And now I feel like I know you better than half the people in my life." Isla glanced sideways at him. "That's the advantage of honesty." "Also mildly terrifying. Truth usually is." They reached the corner near Isla's building. Rowan stopped. "So," he said, "this is you." "Yes." Neither of them moved toward the door yet. Instead, they stood there under the dim glow of the streetlight. Rowan looked down at her. "You're still evaluating?" "Probably." "About what?" She took a breath. "About where this is going." "That's fair. And? And what? What do you think?" Rowan considered the question carefully. Then he answered with the same blunt honesty he always used. "I think we're heading somewhere interesting." "That's vague." "I'm an architect, not a poet." She smiled slightly. "And you're okay with the uncertainty?" "Yeah." "Why?" Rowan stepped closer again. This time there was no hesitation. "Because you're standing here," he said quietly, "and you haven't walked away yet." Isla felt that low spark again, the one that had started on their very first night. "You make that sound like a victory." "It is." Her eyes softened slightly. Then she reached up and grabbed the front of his jacket. Rowan blinked once. He said, "That's new." Stop talking. Why? Instead of answering, Isla pulled him down and kissed him. This kiss wasn't cautious. It wasn't testing the waters. It carried weeks of slow-building tension finally snapping loose. Rowan's hands came to her waist instantly, pulling her closer as he returned the kiss. The city noise faded around them. For a moment, there was nothing except the warmth between them and the electric pull that had been building since the first night they met. When they finally broke apart, Rowan exhaled a quiet laugh. Okay, he murmured. That answers a few questions. Ila's lips curved slightly. Good. Rowan brushed a loose strand of hair from her face again. So, he said, now what? She met his gaze. Her voice was softer this time. Now we find out what happens next. Chapter 10. The Next Fire. The kiss outside Ila's building had not solved anything. If anything, it had made the situation far more complicated, which was exactly why Rowan Hale was pacing across his apartment floor 3 nights later, staring at his phone like it had personally offended him. He hadn't texted her yet. Not because he didn't want to, because he didn't want to ruin the strange, fragile balance they'd found. 3 dates had been easy, structured, clear. Now there were no rules, no contract, just 2 people who were dangerously attracted to each other and equally stubborn about pretending they had control of the situation. Rowan dragged a hand through his hair. Fuck it, he muttered. He grabbed the phone. You busy tonight? The reply came faster than he expected. Depends, he smirked. On? 3 dots appeared. Your intentions, Rowan laughed out loud. God, that woman. Dinner. No ulterior motives. A pause. Then, liar. He leaned against the kitchen counter, typing again. Dinner and extremely obvious ulterior motives. The typing bubble appeared again. Now that sounds honest. Another pause. Then, 7? Rowan exhaled slowly. A slow grin spread across his face. Isla arrived just after 7. Rowan heard the knock and opened the door almost immediately. And then his brain stopped working for about 2 seconds. She had dressed casually tonight, or at least their version of casual. Dark jeans, a fitted black jacket, a thin burgundy top underneath that hugged her waist and shoulders in a way that made Rowan immediately reconsider every calm, rational thought he'd had earlier. Her hair was loose again, the same way it had been the night they first met. He leaned against the doorframe. You're trying to kill me. Isla stepped past him into the apartment. That sounds dramatic. Accurate, though. She glanced around the apartment. You cooked again. Yes. Ambitious. I like feeding people. Dangerous habit. Rowan shut the door behind her. He watched her walk into the kitchen. There was something about the way Isla moved. Controlled. Confident. Like she was always aware of the space she occupied, which meant she was probably very aware of him watching her right now. She turned slightly, catching his gaze. You're staring. Yes? Why? Rowan walked toward the kitchen island. Because every time I see you, you somehow look better than the last time. She rolled her eyes slightly. That's a terrible line. Good thing it's true. Dinner happened the same way it had before. Wine, good food, easy conversation. Except tonight, the tension between them felt heavier, more immediate. The careful restraint they'd maintained over the past few weeks had begun to fray. Rowan noticed it when Isla laughed at something he said, and her hand landed briefly on his forearm. The touch lingered. Neither of them commented on it, but both of them noticed. Halfway through dinner, Rowan leaned back in his chair. All right, he said. What? You're thinking again. She smiled faintly. You've become very good at spotting that. What's the subject this time? Isla swirled the wine in her glass. Then she looked up at him. You, Rowan blinked. Well, that's flattering. Don't get ahead of yourself. He leaned forward slightly. What about me? She studied him carefully. You're patient. You've mentioned. You're calm, usually. And you haven't once tried to rush this. Rowan shrugged. I like the pace. That's the strange part. How so? Most men get impatient. Well, Rowan said dryly, I'm extremely attracted to you, so impatience is definitely present. She laughed. Honest. Always. The laughter faded, the air between them shifted again. Isla set her glass down slowly. Rowan, yeah? What happens if this stops being simple? He didn't answer immediately. Instead, he stood up from the table and walked toward her. Slowly, intentionally. By the time he stopped, they were standing only a step apart. His voice dropped slightly. It already stopped being simple. Her pulse jumped. And you're okay with that? Yes. Why? Rowan looked directly into her eyes. Because I don't want easy. The words landed square between them. For a moment, Isla didn't move, then she exhaled slowly. You're dangerous, Rowan smiled. You say that like it's a bad thing. She shook her head. It isn't. Her hand lifted slightly, resting against his chest again. The familiar contact made Rowan's breath slow. You know what the problem is? She said quietly. What? I like you. The admission hung there, raw, unfiltered. Rowan's heart kicked harder against her palm. Well, he said softly, that's good news. She smirked slightly. Don't celebrate yet. Why not? Because liking someone complicates things? True, and I don't usually let things get complicated. Rowan leaned closer, close enough that he could feel the warmth of her breath. Maybe it's time to try something different. Her eyes searched his face, looking for hesitation, doubt, fear. What she found instead was quiet certainty. You're very sure of yourself, she said. Not really. Then why do you look so calm? Rowan smiled slightly. Because I'm standing here with you. The moment stretched. The space between them felt charged again, familiar, intense. Isla's fingers curled lightly into the fabric of his shirt. Rowan, she murmured. Yeah? You're not going anywhere, are you? No, the answer came instantly. Without hesitation, her eyes softened slightly. Good. Rowan's hand slid to her waist again. This time, neither of them pretended it was accidental. He pulled her closer. The kiss that followed was slower than the one outside her building, deeper, less restrained. Weeks of tension finally had somewhere to go. Isla's hands moved up his chest, fingers sliding along the back of his neck as she kissed him again. Rowan exhaled against her mouth. Fuck, he murmured. She laughed softly against his lips. That seems to be your favorite word. Currently appropriate. They eventually broke apart, both breathing slightly harder. Rowan rested his forehead lightly against hers. You realize something? He said. What? This is the part where most people panic. Why? Because now it's real. Isla considered that. The quiet apartment around them, the city lights glowing through the windows, the man standing in front of her who had somehow slipped past every defensive wall she'd built over the years. Maybe, she said, or maybe this is just the beginning. Rowan smiled slowly. I like that interpretation. She stepped back slightly, not leaving, just creating space again. The tension hadn't disappeared. If anything, it had deepened. Rowan watched her carefully. You're thinking again. Yes. About? She grabbed her coat from the back of the chair. About what happens next. And Isla walked toward the door. Then she turned back toward him. Her smile was slow. Dangerous. We find out. Rowan leaned against the kitchen counter, watching her. You're not going to make this easy, are you? She opened the door. Where's the fun in that? The door closed behind her. Rowan stood there for a moment. Then he laughed quietly to himself. Because the truth was simple. This wasn't the end of the story. Not even close. If anything, it felt like the first real chapter had only just begun.